Yeah, the question is, do we get the thing about outcomes, or what are we doing if we're not actually helping people with the metaphors work? What are we achieving? We're achieving a psychoeducational process by which the person can reevaluate what they're doing with their lives. And they can actually see things for real rather than what they have been told, influenced, hypnotized, convinced, brainwashed into thinking. They can actually pay attention to what their human experience actually is, not what their experience is supposed to be. Because if you think about personal development, NLP, hypnotherapy, all the personal development things are basically saying this one message. Your current experience is the wrong one. You need to upgrade, update your experience to the one we can give you. And when you have the new updated experience, then you're having the correct experience. Oh, but now there's the upsell for the next course or the next level and all the rest of it. So essentially, the pop psychology message is you are wrong. You are inadequate, your human experience is incorrect one, and that you need to change your experience and you need to change, and we are the agents by which to do that. Oh my God. I say the narcissistic values that are expressed there are extraordinary.
Yeah, well, I do agree with the structure of the problem. One of your explanations about how do I know how to, what method to use is like, if life ruined the person, then you can use IMT because it's memory-based stuff. And if a person fucks up his own life, then metaphor work. But if I understand correctly, these days you use metaphors of movements. Generally, only this method you use now with people you work with, right?
Most of the time. However, I mean, I was working with clients over the last 2 days, and I had a couple of people with trauma, PTSD type trauma. We're not talking proper PTSD, but they had some horror. And so, yeah, I was using the IEMT for that stuff. Yeah.
Right. So basically, most of the people that will come to us for, treatment, most of them will come with stuff that they do wrong. They live wrong. So that's why we should work with metaphors of movements to show them what's going on, their full experience now.
Yeah, my general bias is when the client is the agency for what's wrong with their lives, then I'm more likely to be using, I'm more likely to use metaphors of movement. When the person is not the agency of what's wrong, it's because stuff has been done to them or stuff has happened to them, then I'm more likely to use the IMT approaches. The challenge is, of course, that the majority of people, it's a combination of two. They are the agency for what's wrong because of what's happened to them. And for me, herein lies one of the difficulties.
I need this one again.
So a lot of people are the agency now of what's wrong with their lives because of what's happened to them in the past. And they may have never connected those two things up. They're just being who they are.
So I had a bad childhood.
Yes,
and this is why I am like that now, and this is why I behave now. I cannot do anything else.
No.
That's why my life is fucked up.
Right. That's the interpretation we may be able to place upon that, correctly or incorrectly. But that's not necessarily how the person reasons, because people don't tend to think like that. They're just being who they are, and everything's going to shit. That's all they know. A lot of the people I work with, they haven't analyzed it from a meta position and teased it all out and gone through years of self-analysis or whatever else. They have just suffered. And so when that person comes to me, they don't know the distinctions. They don't have those categories. We do, because we study those things, we practice them, we train in them and all that kind of stuff. But the average person does not think in those ways. And the other one, one of the problems that we will see quite a lot, and I can think of a number of examples from the NLP world of people I could name, I won't, but I can name them, who they use past trauma as the justification for what. So for a lot of people, they can identify something that's happened in their background. That is now the peg by which they hang all explanation for all their issues. They don't know that. They might be right. One particular case, I know it's not true. It could well be they'll be just as fucked up as they are currently, even if that thing didn't happen. But
Okay,
because
right.
people have had
Yeah,
things happen, that becomes the explanation of their personality deficits. But
that
actually, they
becomes
may
the
have been a
explanation,
defective
not a
personality
possible
beforehand.
explanation.
Yeah. So people may well have been defective a long time before anyway, and would have still probably more messed up. But so that's the problem with these causal effect relationships, is that they become very tenuous. So in the work that I do, I separate them out. So these are the things that have happened to you. Okay, we can deal with that. We've got the model of IEMT for that one. These are the things that you are currently doing. Okay, so that's the metaphors model. And it's a much easier way to apply remedy to those situations.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's
Because we've got to
reasonable.
look at also
Yeah.
the difference between remedy and creating change. And a lot of therapists don't understand the difference between remedial change and generative change.
Explain.
Okay, so
Please
remedial
explain,
change
because
is you've got a trauma, you're waking up at night in cold sweats and having nightmares. And I do a quick bit of eye movement work and a little bit of identity stuff using IMT, and that takes that pain away. Nothing has
remedy.
changed apart from we got rid of your pain. Now, generative work will be, okay, so I'm going to give you the skill sets to take the different perceptual positions. So you can take meta, you can take other position, you can take self position, by which to tease through these different experiences to create change in your own behaviors and create change in your own life and make better decisions. So one is structuring out how your future will be, and the other one is easing the pain of the past. So that's the difference between remedial and generative, how I think of it. There's lots of other nuances we could put on that.
So basically, the work of metaphors of movement is the second, the
Generative, yeah.
Generative. I'm still gonna wonder how. I don't know if you want to explain exactly how it works. Basically, how it's generative.
You will behave differently when presented with the same contexts. Not straight away, but you'll have now the ability to work it out rather than repeat the same things you've always done.
Right, but this can take like 20 years.
Yeah.
Bummer.
Yeah. The result, the outcome of the metaphors of movement work is how you live the rest of your life. And how you live the rest of your life will depend on the results you get. So ultimately, there's no change. The way you live is the change. The way you go about things will be different, hopefully. But you have the choice not to, of course. So we're not forcing anything.
That's why it's really hard to market. Let's talk about it.
I mean, in the early days, in the first, I'd say 4 years that I was teaching the work, I was chasing change and trying to get people to feel better. But what we discovered in the analysis of feedback and also long-term follow-up of workshop participants, trainees, and of clients, the results were far better when we stopped trying to create change. And then, of course, I had fantastic feedback from people like the Andreases, who had Steve, Mark, and Connie Ray, who were also experimenting with these different processes. Very, very different personalities to myself, of course, as well, and different client groups. So you can imagine the kind of client that would go and see Connie Ray Andreas versus the kind of client that would come see me. Very, very different sorting for who people pick as therapists. So we have different client groups, different cultural backgrounds, but also different personalities of delivery. So we were then able to compare and contrast how we were delivering stuff and what it was we were actually doing. And then, of course, as more people got interested in the work and were feeding back their results, then we had greater data start to come in. And then I realized that this whole chasing change thing is a complete waste of time. And then we get better, ironically and paradoxically, we get better results when we don't try and get results. And I don't know how the clean language guys would frame how they would reference that. I know James Lloyd tried to have that conversation with me, and at the time I was in a different mindset because he was like, so what is your outcome? And I go, well, there isn't a fucking outcome. And I didn't have the distinctions and the categories or the experience at the point that we had that conversation. And so if I had that conversation with him now, I suspect we would probably have a very different conversation. Because he in the development of his work is 20 years ahead of me. So he's got a lot more field data, and he's also a lot cleverer. That's the other thing. He's got he's got the stuff up here that yeah.
Okay. Now another thing that You told me, and I'm like, oh! You know. So one thing you told me is you don't need to feel it in order to do something. Do you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what do you mean that people actually understood it the other way around?
Yeah.
I need to feel. I mean, today's culture is like Tony Robbins culture. Yeah, now I feel better, and then I can do stuff. Now I'm not going to that extreme. I'm talking about, okay, now I need to market myself. I'm sitting
Okay,
now,
yeah.
and I need to do the work, and I need to work 16 hours, and I don't want to do this.
So we've
It's
got
hard for me.
there are two things here that are
It's
worth
even
understanding.
yes.
So we've got the natural and human response, which basically, in order to be motivated, I have to feel the right feeling in place. And if I don't have the right feeling in place, then I will usually opt for a lazy option. So to be proactive, you have to have a kinesthetic motivator. Now, simultaneously to that, you have the interpretation of that phenomena from the NLP strategies model. And I don't know how much strategies is still taught in NLP. I've got a suspicion because I hear it referenced so rarely now by NLP practitioners. With all the watering down of courses, as you've got the trainee of the trainee of the trainee of the trainee of the trainee who originated with the trainer. So here's what we've got. So within the strategies model, we know that we can map out a strategy, and there's the concept of what's called the kinesthetic driver. So now you have thousands of people who have gone onto NLP courses or been exposed to NLP education in varying forms, whether it's by book or online stuff, who are now taught about peak states, amplifying states, and changing states in order to operate from your optimum state. Then that naturally goes into the research. I can never pronounce the guy's name. It's Hunter-Dodlowski, who has the peak flow state. And he talks about being in flow. You then have Eckhart Tolle's thing about state and being in the now. And state suddenly became very, very important. Now, I challenge this as being important. It's important because if that's all you've got to offer from the stage, you have to make it fucking important to build a career out of it. Just like the personal development world and the coaching world needed a disease, and it created the disease of limiting beliefs. And so they built a whole thing around belief changing. I mean, this is classic reality therapy in the early days of CBT about looking at belief values. But they've elevated beliefs to be very, very important. Culture, meanwhile, has elevated beliefs to be very, very important. You must respect everybody's beliefs. Well, screw that, because I will not respect people's beliefs if they're ridiculous or if they're counter to my morality or to the social norms and laws that I live by. But apparently we must respect everyone's beliefs. So then you get those guys who like to challenge those things, and they put stickers up that say, Islam is right about women. There you go. Get out of that bind. Because now, and that was put out as a race hate thing, but can you disagree with Islam is right about women if we have to respect all beliefs? It's fantastic bind. When I saw that, that caught my attention as a point of Google it or YouTube it. You'll find the videos about it. So now what we have is people that feel from a point of privilege, well, I have to be in my peak state to do that. Well, screw that. Do you think the working class who go down the mine shafts every day to do back-breaking, filthy, dangerous work, the guys that work on oil rigs, the guys that go out on the fishing rigs, the guy that build the roads, the laborers, the people that have to pick through the rubbish, do you think they worry about whether they're in the right mood? But no, people treat NLPers, particularly NLPers, treat life as though it's a party. And am I in the right mood or not? Well, what's in it for me? What's my peak state? Good God. So essentially, people become these spoiled teenagers who it's all about me and how I feel. Well, how about making a contribution to the planet, getting off your ass and making an effort? I used to work at the hospital. I worked in a number of different departments. My early days was in accident and emergency, and then before I left work at the hospital, it's in brain surgery. And I tell you, Can you imagine being taken into accident and emergency? You've been in a horrendous accident, your head's kind of like this, your arms up there, and you're all falling off, and the staff go, well, are we in our peak states? Are we feeling optimum? No. Okay, everybody. Now, we're going to take that feeling and spin it through the body. Oh, Susan, you don't accept yourself. Susan, just tap your face over there, Susan. Now, matron, I can see you've got a limiting belief there. Would you like to have that belief busted? Make it bigger and bigger until it blows out of all proportion. Well done, matron. Right, everyone, keep spinning for fuck's sake. Yet, that is how I know some NLPers live their lives. They do. And everything is about whether they're in a state or not. And they've elevated state to be so important because that's what they're selling. And for them, if they want to build a career in talking to people and being important, they have to have it as a very important thing. Now, I'm not saying this is an NLP thing. I'm not saying that at all. And I'm not saying this is what NLP is. But this is what some of the derivatives from the moron brigade have taken this on board and then turned it into something else. This is the consequence of that mass stuff. Just like people go, what does that mean? Is that for fortune telling? Oh, it's hopeless. It's absolutely hopeless because people have always done this. Give them true knowledge, give them really effective, brilliant stuff. They turn it into something stupid. And that's why you have the secret societies and the orders, and the alchemy knowledge was arcane and hidden away from the masses because there was no point in giving it. Don't throw your pearls before the swine. Ultimately, there's no point. The majority of people will water it down, weaken it until it becomes something else, and then that feeds back into the culture. Okay. So I would say if you need to be in a certain state to be motivated to do something, it's not about your state. It's about your ability to make decisions.
My ability to?
Make decisions. And you've been taught.
Okay, so if we talk about
rely on state rather than make better decisions. And back in the early days, I mean, I've watched some amazing early lectures by Bandler, presentations from the early whatever videos they were on, where he's talking about making better decisions rather than relying on state. And that was hugely influential on me at the time.
When I'm going to do work, my inner reaction is of literally physical pain. That's the thing that happened. It's not that I need to feel good and to do the work.
Yeah.
It's literally having, pain when I'm going to do something. I decided, I know that's the correct thing. It will take me somewhere.
Yeah. But here's the deal. I know that people who work in accident emergency, dealing with emergencies, I know people who work in brain surgery dealing with back-breaking, thankless work all day. Because it sounds ridiculous, but it's really hard work in those environments. When they get feelings like that come up for them, guess what? They get on and do it.
They have good reason enough.
Yeah, I could reframe your situation. The reason that you give in to that pain is because you're spoiled. Because if we go back to an analogy used earlier on, if you were feeling that and your child was in danger, you wouldn't go, well, I'm not in the mood. The reality is when
I basically was a child in danger. So, which my house was a house of horror.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't see where did I become a spoiled person.
No, I'm saying now, in order to not act because you don't feel like it is a point of privilege on your part. Because you have the choice not to. It's like in parts of Africa, you don't get agoraphobia. Why? Because if you don't go out your house, you starve to death. Right. Funny that, isn't it? In the UK, it's an epidemic. In Japan, it's an epidemic.
And as a nurse, if you don't do the work, somebody will die.
Right.
In railroads, right, where they work in the sun and it's really hard, right. and
so roads. Essentially, if
they don't do that, they will get fired.
Right. You don't have a consequence sufficient, and that's why you're able to go, oh well, that feeling, that's bad enough, that'll do.
I need to create one to myself that will be tangible.
Well, go and get a job.
I did several times.
I don't know why they don't like
But again, I did it few times.
Yeah,
and I still want to be here.
Yeah, it didn't. Having a job didn't work out for me very well either.
Okay, 4 years now, I live in a survival state, basically. But let's see if it connects to the last thing you said. In survival state, both emotionally and financially, probably because of stuff I do and not do. But the last 4 years have been really wrecking. Because of stuff that happened to me. I had no way of influencing it. Okay, so it seemed I don't know how to create, it seems like I don't know how to create goals or even possible futures. Think about the future, for me. And I don't even believe in creating future, creating options, creating whatever. I'm constantly living the now to survive.
Yep.
So a future or a goal is not even a thing to. There's no point because I need to survive. Now that's an experience I have my whole life. Basically, I don't know anything else, and I don't. I didn't manage to create the skills to create a possible future, to think about future stuff, to make a goal so it can, stretch me to it.
So basically, there's no hope for you, is what you're saying. You haven't got.
I don't know if I have a question.
Now, here's what you could do. I mean, seriously, become Eckhart Tolle's personal trainee.
I don't know
live
how
in the
to
moment. Live in the power of now, man, because you can just enjoy the moment and you'll just be in a perpetual now, because that's the future. I mean, the guy's built a whole fucking career on that.
Yeah, but I don't know how to bullshit stuff.
You don't have to. He'll train you how to do now. I don't disbelieve him. I think he's a genuine guy. I mean, I'm not a fan. There's no doubt about that. But see, there's different ways people live. Some people live in the past. Okay, they nostalgia, and they romanticize the past, and they are, that's where they live. Some people live in the now. Some people are very future focused, and most people fluctuate between the things. Now you have to compare that to. So we have time orientation style, but you also have personality style, whether you're passive, reactive, proactive.
I'm mostly passive.
Right, well, there you go. So nothing will change. If you're passive, you wait for things to change rather than proactively change them. Is to start to introduce elements of proactivity whilst leaving intact what you currently have. So I just give an example. So I was dependent working full-time for other people because I was not able to make a personal income. So on the hours that I wasn't working or drinking, I was working towards my own stuff. And then over time, I started to drink more, but work a lot less for other people. So instead of being 5 days a week, I'd be 4 days a week. So I have 1 day a week dedicated to making money. So my income reduced massively, or by a fifth. But it was not enough to make me homeless. Although I had, it made things tough. Then I went down to 3 days a week as I started to, and that transition, that must have happened over about a 5-year period. At no point did I just quit work and be self-employed. And I got to the point where I was working 2 days a week, and it was only when I resented being in the office that I was working in human resources because I had better things to be doing. And that's when I knew it was time to hand in my notice and go full-time self-employed, which is what I did. So it's a transitioning process. So now we have past, present, future orientation, proactive, reactive, and passive, and now rate of change. And one of the problems about the personal development world is there is a bias around the rate of change that is presupposed. So, for example, the work that people like Bandler does from the stage and what he teaches is about rapid change. No denying it. But look at the context of what he's changing. You see, and that's the important thing. Some of the financial freedom guys, they're saying rapid financial freedom. You can get rich really quickly and effortlessly. Just give me all your money. But it doesn't work that way. That is not how empires are necessarily built. And that's most people who've made a lot of money in real business. They don't do it overnight. It takes, 10 years to be an overnight success. So rate of change is also dependent on the context of what's being changed. And that's something that courses and trainers and stuff, they miss. Because not everything has to be a rapid change. Some things are a gradual evolutional process. Now, you also have the other thing that Bandler proposed, which when I saw this, I thought, oh my God, that bingo, it explains it to me. He said outcomes are most useful because they set direction, but they're not an end point. It's not like, oh, here's the outcome and now I stop there. You have to have an outcome, and then what are you doing after that? What are you doing after that to set a direction and maintain a momentum? And here you have the other factor. You have rate of change, but also the momentum of change that's built into that. You see, some people want long change, but there's no momentum to it. And they're passive. Nothing's ever going to change. But a proactive person who has momentum for change plus a reasonable rate of change is more likely to create change. But every person has a different time style, proactivity, reactivity style, and different time orientation style. And so when change is produced, it must be created according to individual personal styles. The one-size-fits-all does not work. Some people get lucky, and they're the ones, the testimonials that then get paraded around. But for everyone else, they just go, well, that was really interesting. Why aren't I getting the change? I better do another course. But these meta filters, these meta programs, whatever we want to call them, people aren't paying attention to. They just want one answer. What does the card mean? That's it. That's all they want. And then that should solve everything. It doesn't work that way. And the other thing, and this is conversations I have fairly frequently with Nick Kemp, because I know he suffers the same frustration that I do. The amount of work me and him do, the amount of development we do, the amount of hours that we put in, most people are not capable of doing because they're too lazy. People think we just somehow magic this stuff up from thin air and it's out there. They have no concept of the hours of frustration and technological failures, and for me, lots of swearing, in order to try and get sometimes the simplest little sodding thing done. And it's like, oh, for God's sake, like this morning, as you know, from this trying to set this up, I thought, oh, okay, I can just turn on the computer. No, that's not going to help, is it? That's not going to work. Today is going to be frustrating. And sometimes, some days, some weeks, that is the ongoing continuous process. What me and Nick both know so well is that most people, the first sign of difficulty creeping in and those frustrations, they quit. They simply give it up right there and right then. And they are not willing to put themselves through pain. And that's the thing. People are so weak. They are so cowardice when it comes to suffering. And you have no idea what I have to go through to get the stuff done that I do. But that's because you have this little pain that comes up on the inside of you and you quit.
That's because I'm
just like everyone else. And the great news, the great bit about that, and this is why I love it so much, and it's fantastic news for me, is because it leaves the field open for the likes of me. It's why there's so little real competition for the work that myself and people like Nick and people that we associate with. There's so little because we're the ones developing it, because no one else can be bothered. Because they don't want to suffer. They've been drawn into NLP, they've been drawn into personal development or hypnotherapy, whatever it is they're doing.
Well, you see what happened with me. It's a bit different.
They're drawn into this because they want to escape the pain of work. That's their whole motivation. I want to evade the suffering that goes with working. Yeah.
That's because we're spoiled.
Does that help? I'll send you my bill.
No. No, but you know, when you chunk it to those passive, proactive. Well, now I know, for example, I need to work on, I don't know how, but I need to work on my proactive side or meta program. Yeah. I have no idea how. I have no idea what to do, where to go. And if I'll try to find, I will get those NLP magicians to tell me, of course, you just need to ta-ta-ta-ta.
When I did the master practitioner training back
I
in
don't know what to look for.
yeah.
I don't know what correct questions to ask to get to the correct place for me.
Right. Here's what I would recommend, and this is not my advice. This is the stuff that Richard Bandler said at the end or towards the end of a master practitioner course that I was on in the early 2000s. And it was interesting the reaction this got from the audience. I was fascinated more by the reaction than what he said. What he said was, if all you're going to do is study NLP and that's how you want to be successful in life, then you're really missing a trick. You want to go and study exemplars in other industries and things that are completely unrelated. I forget now the exact thing, but he was saying that he had just recently been studying something around architecture, and I think it was bridges. Why? Because it's something he's never looked at before, and there's knowledge in there, things that they know, stuff that he doesn't know, so he wants to know what they know. And that stuck with me because that's something I've always done. You've got to go and find brilliant people who aren't doing what you're doing. Don't rely on brilliant people who are selling the idea to you that you can do more than what you're doing. So if you're focusing on NLPers, for example, or personal development people, what you're seeing there is the best trainers, the best marketers. You're not necessarily seeing the best exemplars. They're the people who are they're probably the most narcissistic, to be fair. So you have to go and find people who are brilliant. Now, I'm very, very lucky because I worked in Southampton General Hospital, which was is an amazing organization. Okay, I was a pain in the ass to everyone, and they didn't like me because I hated it when I was there. But the reality is, the people there, now I'm older and wiser and more grown up, I can see. I knew at the time the seniors that I had in, say, accidents and emergency, some of them had worked there for 20 plus years. These people, they were amazing in terms of their knowledge, their expertise, what they could do, and all the rest of it. In neurosurgery, it went up a notch because in terms of specialism, because in A&E you're very broad. In neurosurgery, some of these senior nurses, oh my God, their expertise they were genius level individuals within this area. But they have to work in a highly regulated and highly disciplined fashion. The two things I've never actually been able to do. And so now, having had the experience that I had with those people, I'm still learning from them, even though I've not seen them for over 20 years. Because as I'm maturing and I'm able to, that my own nonsense starts reducing, I'm able to actually appreciate some of the things they were doing that at the time I fought against. So the trick is to go and find exemplars who are doing stuff that's got nothing to do with anything you're doing. Find out what they know. Find out how they do stuff. I personally think stepping outside of your own bubble into a completely new area is the way to do it. And you want to do it where there's high levels of responsibility. Most people, I know from your former work, you've had experiences of very high levels of responsibility where you have to do things correctly because the consequences are enormous. You've got to seek out those type of industries. So hospital work, of course, has huge responsibilities that come with it. Office work generally doesn't, because if things get misfiled or something goes wrong or an email goes astray or you make a mistake, the consequences aren't actually that catastrophic unless you go further up to decision-making levels. So it's finding areas where there's a high cost and find out how are those people organizing themselves? What are they doing? What are the values they hold? How do they get through those days? How do they deal with the pain of work? Most people are just in their little bubble because they're trying to avoid all that pain of work. And I think for me, the easiest area to get into is to go into areas of care work at low levels. So you could be the tea maker, that kind of stuff, even just as a volunteer.
I tried this here. It's not going to happen in Israel, probably. I need to check it again. It has a very hard entry thingy, whatever.
Of course it's bloody difficult. Of course it is. That's the whole point. You've got to make an effort, you see, and that's the thing. And people are very quick to find an external causation or external reason by which they don't have to create the change that exposes them to the pain of work. It's human nature. It's not you. It's not them. It's not the NLPers. That's just human nature.
The pain.
We are lazy creatures we are hardwired to conserve energy wherever possible.
Right.
All animals are. That's what we do.
Right, but you managed to. I don't want to use war metaphors. To fight it, you managed to do stuff proactively throughout the pain.
Yeah.
Even the pain is there.
The pain of work is there on a daily basis for me because of the shit I have to deal with and the stuff I don't enjoy doing. So, for example, tomorrow I've got to write up a manual because I'm having to do one of the live courses now going to be done online. So I've now got to reorganize the manual and I've got to write up the exercises to send over to the translator. I can tell you that's the last thing I possibly want to do tomorrow, where it's going to be a beautiful summer's day. I've got lots of videos I want to make and there's lots of other. That's the last thing I want to do. But you can be sure that I will be up tomorrow, probably around 4:35 a.m. and I will start. I'll make myself a big mug of tea, and I will get that fucking thing done by breakfast time to get it out of the way. Most people procrastinate and keep putting stuff off. What I will do is the other way around. I will make sure that gets done and out of the way first, and then I can enjoy the rest of the day. Now, because of that, I'll probably then be a bit tired for the rest of the day. So at lunchtime, I'll have a little nap, and then I can enjoy the afternoon. And I can do the stuff I want to do. So I've learned to systematize and organize how I approach these things and get them done in order to minimize the exposure to discomfort. Because if I do it at the end of the day, or if I procrastinate it, I have yet another day of feeling the pain and trying to ignore it. And then convincing myself that checking my Facebook messages is very important.
I can relate. Yeah,
I learned a lot of that with nurses, because in nursing, you're multitasking. You've got so many things running in parallel. So while you're running the bath for that particular patient, you don't just stand there waiting for it to fill, because you've got so many things to do. So you go and quickly make a bed, but you have to be aware that the bath is running. Now, meanwhile, you might have a patient on a commode behind a curtain over there. So you're running multiple things in parallel, and you're never just standing around. When I've shared houses, shared living with other people, it amazes me. Somebody will stand there waiting for the kettle to boil to make coffee, and they won't do the washing up or wash up the few things on the side whilst the kettle boils. They'll stand there and wait. They've got very poor use
the
of time.
microwave thing. Yeah, you look at the numbers going down.
People have very poor economy of time. And so what I learned, because I went into nursing as a student nurse at 18 years old, I learned economy of time because out of necessity. So I don't waste time, and that's how I'm very productive. Whilst people are waiting for things to happen, I'm doing something else. I fly a lot. I travel a lot on trains. I spend a lot of time in the back of taxis. I spend a lot of time waiting at airports. Most people just sit. What are you doing just sitting? This is an opportunity where you've got nothing else to do something productive. And that's when I do enormous amounts of productivity.
Right. It's an opportunity to rest, to finally rest.
It's ridiculous.
Okay.
I do that at night. But then you see, people mock me because I'm always in bed by 8 o'clock. And people ridicule me. All my life, people have commented that I go to bed so early. Oh, you're so boring. Yeah, of course, I'm the most boring person I know. And yet, when I used to share houses with people, then I would have to listen to them every fucking day. No, I'm so tired. We'll go to bed. No, I can't go to bed because somehow getting a decent night's sleep is a weakness. So it's much.
I don't know if it's a weakness, but there are lots of stuff that if I go to sleep, I will miss.
Right.
So many ridiculous stuff, like looking at the TV, reality TV, or whatever. I don't do that. Right.
Now, one of the things I found, and it's the benefits of being self-employed, because I never liked the late shift when I worked at hospitals, because the late shift for me was just dreadful. After about 6 o'clock in the evening,
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
So swapping for early shifts was very easy because most people don't like the mornings. So it was always very easy to swap shifts around and stuff like that. But I believe if you are that person who sleeps in late, say till midday, and you are a night owl and you're awake until 2 a.m, organize your lifestyle to be that. Because not everyone is organized the same way with sleep and wake cycle. Since I've been self-employed and organized, and of course now I live just with one other person. I live with Laura, who has the same sleep-wake cycle as myself.
Oh,
When I lived in houses
lucky.
where I was the only person to go to bed early, of course, other people in the house were irritating to me, and then I was also irritating to them if I woke them up when I was up in the morning. So, organizing yourself to live congruently to your sleep-wake cycle, I think, is one of the most healthy and productive things people can do, because then
Yeah,
things you can reorganize. Your energy levels are now congruent with what you want them to be, rather
right.
than
I'm still.
fighting against things the whole time.
I'm still hectic with that because I used to work lots of years shifts. Now it's ruined my
Yes,
cycles.
it does, and it
So
ruins
I'm
your health as well.
and my health and everything. Um, the reason I don't want to go to work outside and be, by myself, this is one of the reasons, to be able to live, reasonable life.
Yes.
That's okay. So thank you for a huge amount of time. It's been three
My pleasure.
hours.
Yeah.
It's been 3 hours. Just so you know.
What I'll do is I'll chop this down